Chapter 31 spoilers will be out in a few days. And believe it or not, Chapter 31 will really have something really exciting for us to look forward to. Yeah, amidst the political drama and the brutal decisions or paths taken to end someone's life, Chapter 31 will undoubtedly be a turning point for Boruto himself. I mean, a few days ago, we already predicted so many exciting things, especially about Kobu and Koji. To eliminate someone's life and achieve a much more ideal future, there's no choice but to make a very risky decision. And today, at least for the next few minutes, we'll briefly predict what Chapter 31 will be like. So, yeah, as usual, to predict the next chapter, it might be interesting to start with something simple but crucial, and that is the cover. And at least these 4 characters, I think they are very relevant to be on the cover of the next chapter. But of course, I didn't choose these 4 characters randomly or by chance. Rather, I have my own reasons. Starting with Kobu, then Kashin Koji, next Sai, and lastly Kawaki, Amado, Boruto, or even Code. But honestly, for the last case, I'm not really sure. But before I explain the reasons, let's start with Kobu himself. First, the reason why I chose Kobu as the cover is very simple, and I think we can all agree on it, right? Because looking at the last scene in Chapter 30, Kobu's situation and condition are truly dire. Between life and death, that is the conclusion. But since we know how perfectly Ikemoto and Kishimoto write the Boruto story, there will definitely be many plot twists. But at least 2 things are certain and 100% will happen: death and survival. I mean, if the scenario prioritizes a much better future for Ida or even Hima, then Kobu must die. Because once again, if you think that eliminating Kobu is only to save Shikamaru's position as Hokage, I won't blame you entirely. But believe it or not, in this case, Shikamaru's position is the main concern. So if something bad happens to Shikamaru, it will lead to the success or even failure of the operation to defeat and eliminate Mamushi. And of course, at this point, we should all agree. If this operation fails, the consequence will be the future lives of Hima and Ida. And regardless of the final outcome for the lives or even the fate of Ida and Hima themselves, at least it all has to start with killing Kobu, right? Then what if the positive scenario is survival? I mean, what if instead of Kobu having to die for a much more ideal future, an unexpected intervention comes to save him? Because, as we know, sometimes Boruto's story is not easy to predict. As I said before, as a simple example for the umpteenth time, I always use Koji as a reference to justify this statement. I mean, Koji said Boruto was done for without a doubt when he was fighting Jura in the Land of Wind, but what happened was wrong. It wasn't Momoshiki who took over Boruto's body when he was unconscious, but Kawaki who came to the rescue. So in other words, regardless of how the plot twists will unfold Kobu, I think it's simple to conclude that in Chapter 31, he is either dead or alive. But since the topic this time is predictions, of course, I won't leave this without a decision or choice. But of course, this is only based on the perspective of a Boruto observer. So, in my prediction for the next chapter, for some reason, I'm optimistic that Kobu won't die. The reason is simple. The more complicated and branching the future becomes, the more it makes fans interested in continuing to follow this story, right? But what do you guys think? Then, for the prediction of the next cover, it's Kashin Koji. But for Kashin Koji himself, I won't predict much. I mean, in the next chapter, there are so many characters with roles that are actually quite crucial. Yeah, you know what I mean, right? Each character determines whether the execution and even the plot twist will involve them all. And of course, behind all these scenarios or dramas, I think Koji is the center. Not only because he is the mastermind, but also because Koji is the controller who directs everyone's future. And in the end, choosing Koji as the cover is also representative of all the conflicts that will occur in the next chapter. But at least at this point, I'm sure the roles of the characters I mentioned at the beginning will be very decisive for the next chapter, right? So after Kobu and Kashin Koji, the reason why I chose, or rather predicted, Sai as the next cover is purely based on my personal analysis. Believe it or not, at this point, Sai's role has the potential to trigger an even bigger conflict. We know that at the end of Chapter 30, the story ends with a cliffhanger conversation between Shikamaru and Sai. This is not without reason. At that moment, Sai saw an unusual gesture, something that made him realize that what he saw through Kobu's eyes was not trivial. And from there, a conclusion began to form. Inojin, his own son, was directly involved in this scenario. Whether he was fully aware of it or not, the fact that Inojin was currently controlling Kobu's consciousness was enough to complicate Sai's position. Interestingly, if Shikamaru had previously managed to persuade Konohamaru to be on his side, the question now was, could the same thing happen to Sai? After all, Sai and Konohamaru are two characters with very different backgrounds. Konohamaru is synonymous with innocence and idealism. Meanwhile, Sai, with his past en route, is a mysterious figure. Historically, he could be an ally, but he could also be a traitor. It all depends on one thing: loyalty. So far, Sai's loyalty has been completely obedient to the Konoha government. However, if we look at the current situation and conditions, it is difficult to imagine Sai completely siding with the government without considering personal factors, especially when his own child is at the center of the conflict. In my opinion, the most reasonable decision for Sai right now is to remain loyal to Konoha, at least for the time being, in order to save Kobu. But at the same time, he will most likely start to reconsider whether in the future he will truly side with Shikamaru or take a different path. But again, those are just my assumptions. Now I'll throw the question to you. Do you think Sai will remain loyal to Konoha, or will he start to waver because of Inojin? And the conclusion to choose Sai as the cover isn't because a shinobi from the Naruto era has never been the cover in the Boruto era. Rather, it's because of the big role that Kobu himself will play. And regardless of your assumptions about Kawaki or even Boruto saving Kobu, at least that's what I think Sai's potential is after that. And once again, what do you guys think? And finally, Amado, Boruto, Kawaki, or even Code, but at least for these four characters, I want to hear your opinions. And briefly, to predict things that will happen in Chapter 31, honestly, there's a scene that I think needs to be revealed. Yeah, I know that Chapter 31 should reveal the outcome of Koji's scenario regarding Kobu, right? But what if Ikamoto wants to give a break for this intense scene and switch to a flashback instead? Especially with so many things still up in the air, I think many fans are very curious about various things, such as Amado's decision regarding Kawaki's limiter, Code's next mission, and although I don't think it's important, what about Yodo? Because after the revelation that Shinki had survived, we never got confirmation whether Yodo was really dead or not. Is that right? And for Kawaki himself, we did see the results of his power and abilities during the Mamushi invasion, but at least in my opinion, we still can't really be sure of the outcome of Amado and Kawaki's decision. Because personally, I think we will really see the results of Kawaki's power adjustment or increase after he fights the real boss. Because of course, if the opponent he faces is only Mamushi, I think we can't fully assess whether Kawaki has become stronger or not, right? But what do you all think? And honestly, there are still many things I want to predict, but I know that the more I predict, the more it sounds like nonsense. So at least for the Chapter 31 prediction, that's all. If you enjoyed this video, please help me get it to 100 likes. Thank you for watching. I'm Nim without the E. See you in the next video. Bye-bye. Databayo.